Caitlin Clark that's setting out games, or is it the Indiana Fever making Caitlin Clark set out games?
Now, this game is one that they probably had circled with a smiley face by it.
Caitlin Clark sitting out games again. But is this really about an injury, or is the Indiana Fever actually pulling the strings to keep their biggest star off the court? This wasn't just any game on the schedule. This was one they had circled in bright red with a smiley face next to it, a game dripping with drama and tension. And now, right when fans were ready for fireworks, ESPN drops a bombshell on Stephanie White that's shaking the WNBA to its core. It all started when White slipped up live on television. And from that moment, the cracks in the story began to spread. What should have been a simple injury update turned into whispers, suspicions, and now an all-out storm that has fans wondering if the Fever are deliberately sidelining Caitlin Clark. The backlash is exploding, the questions are multiplying, and tonight's absence just turned into the biggest mystery in the league. Breaking news just hit: Caitlin Clark will not be suiting up tonight. Official word from the team says it's a right groin injury, and she's listed as day-to-day. But let's be honest, that day-to-day tag is starting to look a lot more like week-to-week, or maybe even see you in late August if you're lucky. ESPN's Holly Rowe just reported that Clark already saw a specialist, no new damage found, nothing alarming, yet somehow her return date has been quietly pushed deep into the third week of August. That's several weeks away. And here's where it gets messy. If it's that serious, why in the world is she out here kicking a soccer ball like she's trying out for the US women's national team? Not limping, not protecting the leg, full swing with the same side that's supposedly injured. And before you think this is some old clip, it's not. This is recent, happening while she's officially sidelined. So, explain to me how Caitlin Clark is well enough to launch a soccer ball, but somehow too hurt to take a jumper or run the floor. Fans aren't buying it. They're mad, they're frustrated, and a lot of them are starting to think there's way more to this story than the Fever want anyone to know. And now, here's where it gets wild, because moments after that speculation started swirling, boom, breaking news hits like a thunderclap. Caitlin Clark officially out of tonight's game, listed with a so-called right groin injury, and slapped with the day-to-day tag that sounds harmless, but in reality is stretching into week-to-week, maybe even see you in late August if you're lucky. And the weird part? ESPN's Holly Rowe literally told us Clark saw a specialist. There's no new damage, nothing changed. Yet somehow her return date is pushed back deep into August, which makes absolutely no sense. And if that's not enough to raise eyebrows, a clip drops showing Caitlin Clark casually kicking a soccer ball like she's prepping for the US women's national team. Same leg, same stride, no hesitation, no limp, and no, this isn't some old highlight, it's now right in the middle of her being benched, and fans are going ballistic asking the obvious. If she can swing her leg like that, why can't she run the floor or drain threes? Is she really hurt, or are we watching a cover-up in real time? And this is where the real suspicion kicks in, because experts start chiming in, and they're not buying the narrative either. They're openly saying maybe this isn't even Caitlin's choice. Maybe the Indiana Fever are the ones pulling the strings, deliberately keeping her off the court. And you have to admit, the timing is just strange. Last week's exam found 0 additional injury, no setbacks, nothing. Yet coach Stephanie White suddenly starts talking about being more cautious this time around, making sure Clark ramps up in practice, finds her rhythm, eases back in. And that's a wild shift, because earlier in the season, they threw her straight back into games with no real practice time, no conditioning, nothing. And now they're suddenly the poster child for load management, circling a possible mid to late August return because it gives them more practice days. Like they're building a rocket instead of letting the league's biggest star hoop, and the more they talk, the less it sounds like they're protecting her, and the more it sounds like they're protecting themselves. And then comes the part that really makes fans feel like they're being played, because instead of giving a clear, confident injury update, Stephanie White steps up to the mic and delivers one of the vaguest, most awkward pressers you'll ever hear. She starts talking about outside noise and how things inside the locker room need to stay inside, which is exactly the kind of thing you say when there actually is drama you don't want spilling out. And her tone wasn't calm, coach speak. It was tight, hesitant, like she's tiptoeing through a minefield trying not to set off an explosion. And that's why fans instantly jumped online saying the vibe was spooky, because nothing about her delivery sounded like business as usual. It sounded like crisis control mode, and it just so happens this all goes down right before a high-drama matchup with the Phoenix Mercury. A game already loaded with tension because Diana Taurasi and Dewana Bonner are involved, and Bonner's history with the Fever is anything but pretty. So now you've got this emotional powder keg and suddenly Caitlyn's out, which feels less like coincidence and more like someone carefully moving chess pieces behind the scenes. Because, let's be real, this wasn't just another date on the calendar. This was the game the Fever had circled in bold red, probably with a couple fire emojis next to it. The one that carried all that leftover bad blood from Bonner's ugly exit. And what does Stephanie White do? She gets in front of cameras and starts showering Bonner and the Mercury with compliments, saying she's found her fit, she's comfortable in their system, like she's talking about an old friend instead of a rival, and fans are sitting there going, wait, what, shouldn't you be hyping up your own team and defending your star player instead of gassing up the opposition? Because the timing makes no sense. And here's the kicker. The same organization that earlier in the season rushed Caitlin Clark back onto the court with zero practice and no ramp-up time is now suddenly acting like she needs a NASA-level training program before she can even step back on the floor, and conveniently, this extra cautious timeline just so happens to push her return past this Mercury showdown, which for a lot of people feels way too perfect to be an accident. And then, boom, the soccer ball clip drops like a grenade. Caitlin Clark, the player who's supposedly too hurt to even run drills, is out there kicking a soccer ball, like she's auditioning for the US women's national team, not limping, not grimacing, not protecting that leg at all. She swings through like she's been perfectly fine for weeks, and fans instantly lose it. The internet explodes with side-by-side screenshots of her on the sideline in street clothes and her out on the field, crushing a soccer kick with the exact leg that's supposed to be injured. One fan writes, if she can do that, she can hoop, another says. So we're just gonna pretend this groin strain is career-threatening now, and people aren't buying the PR spin anymore because the video is right there in HD proving something doesn't add up, and instead of calming the storm, the Fever stay quiet, which only makes the whole thing look shadier than ever. And that's when the questions go nuclear, because now it's not just about a groin injury, it's about trust. It's about whether the Indiana Fever are running the show here. Instead of Caitlin Clark herself, experts start chiming in saying, hey, what if this isn't her decision at all? What if the team is deliberately keeping her out? And suddenly the timelines start looking suspicious, because earlier in the season they rushed her back from an injury with zero ramp up, no real practice, no conditioning, just threw her straight into games. And now we're supposed to believe she needs some NASA level return to play protocol before she can even shoot a jumper. The inconsistency is glaring, and it feels less like player safety and more like someone up top is pulling strings to manage optics, to avoid headlines, to keep certain storylines out of the spotlight. And if that's the case, then this isn't injury management anymore. This is straight up narrative control, and that makes fans even more furious. Because the biggest star in the league shouldn't be used like a pawn in some behind-the-scenes game of chess. And that's where the locker room whispers start getting louder. Because Stephanie White's press conferences aren't calming anyone down, they're making it worse. She's talking about keeping things inside the locker room, about blocking out the outside noise, and about how the team has to stay together. But if everything was smooth behind the scenes, she wouldn't even need to say that. The way she says it is tight-lipped, almost like someone trying to stop a leak before the whole dam bursts. Her tone isn't that of a confident coach managing an injury. It's someone tiptoeing through landmines trying not to trip one. By mistake, fans are reading between the lines and they don't like what they see, because this feels less like a normal sports injury and more like damage control after something went sideways. And the more she sidesteps the question, the more suspicious it feels, because at this point no one's convinced this is just about rehab anymore. And now the timing makes this whole thing even messier because of all the games to sit Caitlin Clark out. It just so happens to be against the Phoenix Mercury, the team loaded with tension and history, and yes, the very team with Dewana Bonner, who didn't exactly leave the Fever on friendly terms. Her exit was ugly and everyone remembers it, and this matchup was circled on the calendar months ago, not just as a game, but as a grudge match, the kind of night where headlines write themselves, and the drama could spill over on live television. And what happens? The Fever pull their biggest star right out of it. Some say it's to avoid putting Clark in the crossfire, others say it's to protect her from the spotlight, or even the tough questions that might follow. But let's be real, having her benched for this game looks way too convenient. And when you pair that with vague injury updates and cryptic coach comments, the whole thing reeks of a bigger story. The Fever don't want out yet. And just when you think the mystery can't go any deeper, the soccer ball clip explodes online. And suddenly every fan from Indiana to Iowa is asking the same question. If her groin is so bad that she can't even run the floor, then how is she out there kicking a soccer ball like she's about to make the World Cup roster? And it's not a slow, cautious kick either. It's full power using the exact same leg that's supposedly injured. This isn't from months ago. This is now while she's being kept out of games. And when that video went viral, it blew the lid off whatever story the Fever were trying to tell, because now the internet isn't buying it. They see a star player healthy enough to play, but being held back, and they're starting to think it's got nothing to do with her leg at all. From locker room politics to front office power plays, the theories are getting louder. And the one thing that's certain is that the Fever are losing control of the narrative fast. At this point, it's not just about a groin injury or a missed game. It's about trust. It's about whether the Indiana Fever are telling fans the full story or feeding them a carefully packaged version to protect something bigger, because Caitlin Clark isn't just any player. She's the face of the league, the rookie everyone tunes in to watch. And when your brightest star is sitting courtside instead of dominating on the floor without a clear explanation, you're not just losing the games, you're losing the faith of the very people keeping the WNBA alive. Every vague press conference, every suspicious timeline, every viral clip that contradicts the official story pushes the narrative further away from injury management and deeper into conspiracy territory. The Fever can hope fans stop asking questions, but they won't, not when the evidence keeps stacking up. And the silence from Caitlin herself is speaking louder than anything the team can say. If the Fever want to put this fire out, they're going to have to give straight answers fast. Because until then, this saga isn't going away, it's only getting bigger.